Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. My name's Alexa Rosenthal. As she said, I'm the co-founder and chief ecosystem organizer at Ecoversity. And in the last 22 months, we've graduated over 600 students from 27 different countries, accelerating a regenerative change online since the pandemic. And I'm really excited to be here today to facilitate a conversation with my friends and accomplices, Savra Noshumari and Matthew Duffy, the co-directors of Spore, or the Society for Psychedelic Outreach and Education. And we'll be talking about the Mycelium today. And inspired by the mushrooms, Spore embodies a way they call mycelial organizing, which lays the foundation for responsible psychedelic medicine, stewardship in Colorado and beyond. So thanks for being here today. And hi, everybody. So if you both can introduce yourselves, what Spore is, and in your own words, and what you guys do individually at Spore. Duffy?
Hello. Thank you, Alexa.
You're welcome.
Let's give it up for the 33rd Crestone Energy Fair and ourselves and the land and all the organizers and volunteers. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Matthew Duffy. I go by my last name, Duffy. I'm co-founder and co-ecosystem director at Spore, which is Society for Psychedelic Outreach, Reform, and Education. I prefer the title Captain Compost because I feel like that's what I actually do. I just get up in the shit and try to alchemize it. Spore came out of the campaign that decriminalized mushrooms in Denver in 2019, and that made Denver the first city in the country to decriminalize any psychedelic or entheogenic substance since Prohibition. And so after that campaign, which I was one of the core Spore organizers for, we were saying Spore organizer back then. Spore was born from the sporulating team that was that band of rebels that stood up against the empire and did something cool. And we now are focused on two primary initiatives, this My Coalition that we're going to focus on today, and a people from the ground up public education storytelling based approach to public education called the Right to Heal campaign. And really we're just focused on, in psychedelic assisted therapy, there's this phrase, set and setting. Has anyone ever heard of that? Set and setting? First, yeah. So it's basically your mindset and the environment. Those are really critical conditions for optimal psychedelic healing and transformative experiences. And we say we're really focused on the collective set and setting. So how do we consider our communities and our cultures and a broader, more holistic collective understanding of what healing even is and what is even going on with this relationship that is being restored between people or rediscovered between people and these medicines. I'll pass it to my partner in mycelial mischief, Savra Noshumari.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. How's everybody doing? Great. Yes, I love to hear it. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Savra Noshumari. I am the co-ecosystem director at Spore. And something that I was thinking about this just a second ago, and I was like, okay, I could tell you all the things that I do, as far as work, but I thought I would just tell you more of like the energy that I bring through a story real quick. So when I was 7, and that was like 1992, I don't know if gymnastics is a passion of mine. And when I was a little kid, I was watching these gymnasts on TV do these tricks and throw their bodies in the air, and it was beautiful. It was just a beautiful display of just embodiment to be able to wield body and space in a particular way that I thought was gorgeous. And being a kid, I was looking at it and like my body started like jumping. It was like resonating with what was happening. And so I stood up at 7 years old, and I was looking at the TV, and I was looking at myself, looking at the TV, and then I just threw my body back. And I did my first backflip just by watching it from watching TV. And so by the end of the summer, I could run and do a back handspring backflip. And so that was kind of like my first, like that. I did that at 7. And it was just this my body giving me this information of anything is possible. Like literally anything is possible. And so like that's the kind of energy that I bring to Spore. That's the kind of energy that we are cultivating at my coalition. That's the kind of energy that we are trying to bring into any space that we're in. Anything is possible.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sovereign and Duffy. Great introductions. So you guys are talking a lot about mycelial organizing. And does anyone know what that is out there? Okay, we got a few hands up. It's a little complicated, right? So let's talk about it. They like metaphors a lot at Spore. So let's talk about what mycelial organizing actually is and what that means to you guys at Spore.
Yeah, I don't think any of y'all would hear of it because we kind of made it up. During that campaign in 2019, the Denver Psilocybin Initiative, I'd like to remember it was myself, but I'm not really sure. But somebody in one of the meetings stood up and was like, "This is mycelial organizing." Because it's like, cute. It's like deeper than grassroots, and our focus is much more relational. And we found that we weren't so like hell-bent on an outcome. We saw that the magic that was just coming through us being guided by mushrooms and the faith and devotion that all these people had to each other in this cause was the most important part. So I would reckon everybody here knows what mycelium is. I don't need to, right? Mycelium is the root system, essentially, of the fungal organism, and it creates the network of synergy and reciprocity, and basically, sacred economics is a foundation for ecosystems. And then the organizing part, we were talking about this on the way up. I'm kind of averse to that word in regards to the work that I feel like we as humans do. I think we might think we're organizing. I feel like if we're really creating, movement spaces and community and building community power and coming together for incredible, beautiful, difficult to imagine on your own, but when you're with a group of people, anything's possible community efforts. You're tapping into something that's really organizing you. You're more facilitating. So I honestly feel like the mushrooms are organizing us, and this approach that we have in trying to really embody that is focused on critical relationships. Just basic root facts of the universe is we are interdependent. I am because you are. So when we're talking about healing, or we're talking about liberation, justice, wealth, having thriving lives, the way that we actually create those is through our relationships. So we have goals. There are impacts that we want to see with this movement and with how psychedelic medicines are integrated into society. We want that to look holistic, and we want that to look responsible, and we want power to the people for community sovereignty in stewarding medicine. And we trust that will happen through building real, authentic solidarity and moving at the speed of trust. We say that a lot. Holistic change. Change can happen in many different ways. Change isn't necessarily positive. For holistic change to happen, which I kind of feel like true revolution really is holistic change. that happens at the speed of trust. You know, it has to be through the relationships and people consenting to it. So the last little bit I'll say about the mycelial organizing part, a really amazing, fascinating thing that mycelium does is mycelium sends a signal out to plant root systems to wait for a response for consent before it penetrates the cell, before the mycelium, the hyphae penetrates the cell wall of the plant roots to make that synergistic relationship. I think that's one of the most beautiful things that happens on this earth. And we have no better framework for a network of mutual aid and collective care and solidarity than the mycelium. So that's what we do. And we eat a lot of mushrooms to figure out how to do it. So.
I guess what I would add to that too, with the mycelial organizing, I myself am very inspired by trees, and if you look around, you can see a whole group or family of trees kind of holding us up, you know, watching us, giving us oxygen, you know, giving us place to rest, lean on. You know, I think, you know, using nature as a blueprint for how we as humans should be is incredibly important. The concept of biomimicry, like the solutions are already here. Like I'm looking at the trees and they're like, yeah, we've been telling you, you just need to look at us. You know, hug a tree today. Thank you. Everybody, if you have an opportunity, hug a tree. It'll tell you a secret. It'll give you some energy. But yeah, that's something that I feel like we and this process are really looking to the mycelium, looking to nature to give us critical feedback on how we're moving and giving us information on ways to consider moving. So, thank you.
Thank you both. Duffy, you mentioned the word solidarity, which is a word that's brought up a lot in organizing or activism or making change in any ecosystem or community. What is solidarity and how is the mycelial organizing accelerating that? And I'm going to start with Sav on this one.
Hi. So, yeah, let's talk about solidarity, shall we? Where is she? How is she? When is she? Yeah, solidarity to me has been this journey of trying to figure out, like for myself, I'll start from an embodied response, just from childhood, not necessarily belonging in my own family, and my queerness, my blackness, my being kind of being pushed up against in my own cluster of people, you know, and like looking for places to belong. And I've been through many ecosystems from many different movements in the last like 10, 15 years since feel like I've been called or activated to doing the work on myself to do this work. And it's been really interesting to see the lack of solidarity. So it's like I define it by what I don't see. Like I don't see people being willing to look beyond themselves in an effort to connect to another. I wish to see more people being willing to come together and express the pain, emotions, like traumas, like being able to really truly express like what we are bringing to a circle so that we can, oh, sorry, I thought it was someone talking to me. Coming into a circle to metabolize the tensions that we have. You know, to me, solidarity, I'm looking at this like network of trees. I'm thinking of mycelium, like they're in agreement to be together. They're in agreement, like I'm looking at the branches, right? Like they're connected to a trunk, then they turn to branches, and then they turn into leaves. Like people, like it has different destinations, but it's still connected by a single thing. And I feel like to me, solidarity is that. but it's something that I find really hard to embody, or it's really hard to see it embodied when we're all so different and we live in a system that values that difference, and then we pay people to continue to perpetuate that difference. So like, where's the trunk? You know, like where is the trunk of our movements? You know, and I think we get solidarity for a minute to achieve certain goals, but then again, capitalism will come in and then try to separate you, and then it gets lost. So to me, solidarity is also an opportunity to truly build a foundation that's sustainable, that's reciprocal, you know. And then it's like, not everybody has to believe the same thing to be in solidarity, but you have to believe that there's a cause bigger than you to stay together if and when someone is needed or you need something from someone. So, but I really want to see it. Like, I dream about it. I've come a long way in search of it, and I will continue to be in search of solidarity. It's my particular journey, and I hope to see it. I really do. I dream about it, and I'm sure you all do too. But yeah.
Thanks, Sab. A couple years ago, a couple days after a pretty large dose and journey with mushrooms, I was contemplating solidarity, and the mushrooms have this way of meme making. Like, they've turned me into this meme machine, like just memes all day just coming through this brain. And they said that solidarity is where sovereignty and interdependence meet. And I've stuck with that as like my simple definition for solidarity. For me, what I understand, with all of our differences and how we're essentially non-essential. We're always changing. We're always morphing in becoming. Our ideas of what's true, what is justice, what is solidarity are shifting because we're constantly in motion. But I believe solidarity is that commitment to collective liberation, to mutual liberation, to in relationship being fully, in dignity and receiving another in their full dignity, regardless of where they are located in their life, in society, in whatever. And it's not a given, and I really appreciate the preface that you said, because in one fractal level, it is a given. It is what makes this all up. It is the interdependence of life. But for us, and for this, human having a spiritual experience, spirit having a human experience, whatever it is, experiment, we have to give it. We don't just, we can't theoretically comprehend it and then it's like, yeah, I know what solidarity is. We can forget it as easily as we can remember it. And I think we can remember solidarity together. This might sound kind of left fieldish, but that's where I live. Is through a deep practice and praxis of forgiveness that we can arrive, and it's not superficial. It's deep. It's an action. And as soon as we can forgive ourselves and another for taking part in some sort of trespass, transgression, injustice, and do it meaningfully, not just like, in a way that's bypassing. Really, truly, in your bones, you've forgiven. You can come back you remember then, and come back to solidarity. I have a little riddle on forgiveness and remembrance later. If you come to our table, I'll hit you with it. But mycelium, as we're getting at in the last question, how mycelium organizes and reproduces in this way and builds this network of relationships that, it's something over 90% of all tertiary plants couldn't exist without the relationship to mycelium. So that foundation for life begetting life that's why the mycelium exists. It's just constantly looking for synergy. It's looking for power with the whole dominator power over model. Mushrooms don't compute. It's like, yeah, you're gonna die and we're gonna compost you and regenerate you into a more abundant, thriving ecosystem over and over again, no matter how colonized and detached your civilizations get from the basic fact of interdependence. You can't escape it, because it actually, at the end of the day, it is solidarity. So it's the approach with the My Coalition and Mycelium organizing. It's just that practice of remembering that together is like, what is really true? What is like true holistic justice and solidarity in this moment with any given group of people, with what we're working towards? Can we stay in the relationship and resist the temptation to move into like a transactional way of being with each other, or a utilitarian way of being with each other, and find a deeper utility in the synergy that is it just latent in our connection, so.
Woo! Give it up for Duffy and Sav. Thank you both so much. That was super juicy. You guys have been talking about the My Coalition, Colorado being a huge place for this movement, the psychedelic movement. What is, for those of us that might not know, what's a coalition in general, and what is the My Coalition? How is it playing a part in this movement, specifically here in Colorado?
Dang, me first?
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, you should go in part because you hold so much of this and you've gone through this. You've been holding it down for a while, so I'm like, you should name this.
Let me go.
Go.
Oh, thank you. So I don't know, like, the Webster definition coalition. I kind of think it's people genuinely coalescing around a common goal or vision, and doing so intersectionally, bringing different parts of an issue or a problem, or just community need, into a sort of like ecosystem arrangement where often capitalism creates a pressure for us to work in silos. So to build like intersectionality and see where the common ground actually is, and really focus there, and also the work that comes in building these really strong relationships where there's always going to be drama and trauma cycling, and that's karma. It'd be moving through us in all these different ways, and the commitment to solidarity and with different collectives coming together on a common cause, you can form what we call a coalition. So the My Coalition, we like our mushroom puns, and we like to be as cute as possible, as often as possible. So My Coalition, like mycology, it's this mycelial approach to coalition building. And what was the second part? Like, what are we doing? What is it?
How did it get started?
Oh, great question. So it's going to get juicier, I promise y'all. So the My Coalition had been somewhat of a vision percolating for a while. We at Spore, and Spore has gone through many iterations and alchemical phoenix revivals in our little 3 years. But COVID, that was like a whole century. So we have been looking at like, how do we really bring together all these different parts of this emerging psychedelic ecosystem into alignment. So there's like grassroots community and people who are really committed to healing justice, And then there's the psychedelic assisted therapy community. There's the researchers. There's the politicians who they're just gonna jump on anything that's hot. There's the festival communities. Like how can we bridge all of these different communities to create change where there is common goals? And lo and behold, as I said, Denver was the first city to decriminalize an entheogen since Prohibition. Shout out. What's up? You got to sign up over here. We'll bring it together. So yeah, our table's over here. Please come over and hang out with us. We'll be painting each other's nails. We'll paint your nails. We got different sign-up sheets. So yeah, just come and get to know us, and we'd love to get to know you. But so full circle from the Decrim Denver days, I realized shortly after that campaign, we were so excited. We were like, wow, no one believed that we would do it. Even a lot of people in the campaign were like, I mean, this is fun and it's a good cause, but we're not actually gonna do it. There was a bold few. Me, I'm always that dude that's like, we will do it. Like, yes, we can. And we did, and we barely won, though. It was like a 51% victory on the vote. And yeah, man. Yeah. It's too loud? You're so close up to the stage. I think that's our problem then, I guess, yeah. So lo and behold, yeah, I've realized shortly after that campaign that I feel like my dharma in this whole mix, and I think a big role that Spore plays, is actually to slow things down. Because a lot of this stuff, like suddenly we decriminalized in Denver, and we never could imagine that all these different cities and states would have followed suit so soon after. It was so quick. And we all want to see these laws change. The drug war needs to end entirely. And we have a responsibility to really make sure that the ways that medicine is integrated into our communities, is really held in community trust, is not dominated by for-profit industry. Like if we don't have the power and sovereignty to steward medicine in our communities, and it's still gatekept by basically the same big pharma model, that's not it. It's not healing. Full circle, this past year, there started to be some whispers in community about a potential ballot initiative statewide for Colorado for something around psychedelics. And as that became more and more real, there was a PAC. There's a PAC called New Approach. They were behind a lot of cannabis reform around the country, out of state. They are polling in many different places, one of which being Colorado, and they saw some good opportunity with some of the early polling that they were doing. So they started organizing to, set up a state-regulated framework for psychedelic medicine. They didn't know which medicines they were going to go for. They knew probably mushrooms. And as that became real, we, being the scrappy little nonprofit out of Denver, for being 2 years old, we're like decently resourced. Thank you the money ancestors and all y'all. But we don't stand a chance with some of the political and capital power that something like a super PAC has, to really make sure that what's going to happen with the policy reform in the process is truly equitable, is driven by community, is represented, the most marginalized communities are represented. All respect to the people who came with New Approach and started to organize around this ballot initiative that is live in the state currently. I don't know if everyone here knows. Actually, I'd love a show of hands. Is everyone here aware of the Natural Medicine Health Act that's on the ballot for Colorado this year that Coloradans will be voting on in November? Did you? So you didn't, but most people didn't? Can you raise your hand? Could you raise your hand if you did not know? Yes. Exactly. I would love to show that because this seems like a very psychedelic, astute community out here, right? And y'all don't even know because it's been part of the strategy to not educate and inform people whatsoever that this is even happening. So it was kind of, like I'd say usual suspect situation, like all corporate heads, all white men creating a stakeholder group. They're like, this is it. We're going to create it. We know what this is going to look like. It's going to be good for everybody because that seems to have worked out over centuries and centuries. And we were like, hold on a second. And so we organized this coalition for an immediate response of what was needed to make sure that there was that we could disrupt, influence, and make an impact on this process that was already 12 steps ahead of us. And they had the really high polling numbers, so they basically didn't need us. They didn't need the people. They didn't need the community because the general public is seeing all the mainstream media around psychedelics that this, is great for depression and PTSD, and people are seeing all the good news and all this hope around psychedelics, and they're like, yes, this is a good thing because people deserve to have access to mental health treatments that actually work. But the gag, where the monopoly guy's slipping out the back door with the bag, is that this piece of policy it doesn't put people over profit. It does the opposite. It really puts commercialization over community. We'll get more into it in a bit, so I'm going to save it. And I'm sure there might be questions. But the My Coalition formed more urgently to be able to have some kind of response to what was happening there. And we were the primary grassroots influence, pretty much the only grassroots influence of this piece of policy. And I feel good about that. And I'm still telling people to vote no. I'm going to vote no. And that surprises people often because they're like, you're the co-ED of Spore, you're all about this. And I was there with many people through this process. There would not have been marginalized community representation if we didn't, essentially kind of kick in the door. And that's a problem. There can't be equity without an equitable process. And this measure really sets up people, the for-profit venture capital aspect of the whole psychedelic ecosystem, which has garnered a lot of capital in the past few years, a lot of investment. They're very poised to determine what implementation on this policy looks like. And we are just getting our community together. We just decriminalized in Denver 2 years ago, and then COVID. The people of Colorado deserve the space, time, and resources to create community-driven policy reform to make sure that medicine is stewarded in community and the reform is community-based. So I really genuinely feel like we could do a lot better with a couple more years where we can do our thing with the My Coalition and support a potentially community-led policy initiative. But we'll see what happens in November. Right now, and I'll wrap it up, this part up here, the My Coalition we're organizing in a way anticipating that it could pass, and there's a really strong chance that it could pass. I think it's going to be really close. And if it does pass, then we're organizing, the My Coalition is now focusing on creating a People's Medicine Pact and a People's Medicine Council. Because what's not happening with all this policy work around the country is we're not doing some basic movement, community organizing 101 stuff and creating ethics, shared values community agreements and principles around the changes that we're going to make. There's just people who have political power who can make the change to set up shop, and so they want what they can get as quick what they want as quick as they can get it. So we're gonna, through creating this pact and creating this council, it's gonna take years for the rules to actually be created if the NMHA does pass. We're gonna, through this pact, we're going to make sure that as best we can, that the implementation of policy and all the rulemaking and creating this whole framework for medicine regulation that will be held through the Department of Regulatory Agencies at Colorado is the governing department of that. And if you know anything about them, it's such a joke. And then there's a decriminalized aspect to the bill that we can get in later too, making sure that that's driven by community. And if it doesn't pass, then we're gonna create the conditions for a statewide initiative that can actually be led by Coloradans.
I mean, I feel like that was it on that. The only thing I would add to that is nothing. No, that was great.
Thank you, Duffy. Thank you. So for those of us that are listening, what's worked well so far in this movement? What hasn't worked well, and what can we learn from it for the people?
So what's worked well, and I can honestly say this, because I was like, am I going to lie? No, but I'm not, is the amount of people who care, the amount of people who believe in what we're doing, the amount of people who believe in psychedelics, the amount of people who want to figure out how to get through this. Like, that to me has been so powerful, because I've been a part of other movements, and some of that wasn't there. And I think with psychedelics, at least for me, I feel like psychedelics gives you proof that transformation is possible. And I think it's up to us to then manifest that in reality beyond our own self, right? Like, I can have a transformative experience and now I'm Soleil Moon Frye and I can frolic and do all the things. But like, psychedelics has told me, like, hey, do deeper work, be able to like understand yourself when you're wrong. Like, what does it mean to be when you're wrong? And like, how do you move from that place? How do you accept new information and move forward? And so being able to be a part of my coalition and watching that kind of move has been really, really powerful. And I think that's worked really well. And people like show up. That's the thing that also I'm like, people, when you ask, or we'll make an ask and people will come through. And so it tells me that people are ready to show up, and they're ready and they're curious. And so to me, like, that there's an opportunity for this transformation to like be deepened and to be more embodied. So that to me is what I've seen as far as what's worked.
Yeah, you got it.
2:35. We're going to open up to questions after one more after this. But I just wanted to highlight the reason why I'm here is because of Duffy invited me to what the My Coalition holds as a town hall in Denver, which is a beautiful space that Duffy and Sovereign have facilitated for the community, where instead of the stakeholders that Duffy is talking about with the Super PAC, there's actual stakeholders of the community in a facilitated conversation. And what I think has gone really well is there's like a lot of great failure. Like, and what I love about watching Duffy is how gracefully he keeps failing and keeps getting up, straight up. And I think that's one of the greatest things in movement, is like being able to graciously fall and be like, that didn't really work. And then getting up the next week, inviting everyone. And I've never been in such an intersectional space. And this man is dedicated to making sure all voices are in a room. And what happens with all voices, like when we're talking about solidarity, all the different identities that are coming out of collective trauma of the pandemic and our individual traumas of living life as humans during climate change, like coming to a room and actually being honest about those conversations and being able to be held in a space where it's okay to keep failing and figuring out what the next move is by letting the emergence of what the truth is in a collective rise has been one of the most beautiful things as an individual in a community to watch. So big props to Duffy for failing so graciously and winning in the goals that you are setting. Seeing their movement, seeing the legislation actually be swayed. The man has like stood up to one of like the most fiduciarily having money to do this. He stands up and keeps fighting for it. So I think there's a lot to learn in making sure in conversations to have key stakeholders that actually represent a community. Having someone disabled, having someone of a different race, of a different gender, of a different sexual past, like all of those conversations. And I think the My Coalition Spore is doing that really significantly, and I just wanted to give them serious props for that. Yeah. Yeah, Duffy wants to grab it.
Yeah, on that, I'm glad that I would say the same thing. Is like where we fail best where we succeed. I understand succession as that. It's we fail forward. Cornel West says that we really don't ever hit our mark. We just fail better. We fail better every time. And that's succession. There's no singular success point wherever we're trying to reach. The American dream has kind of created this illusion that one day if you work really hard you'll get to this place, but we live in cycles. And so speaking of, she needs to compost that plate. Well, thank you. Yeah, the composting work, the succession work. We're definitely here for a long game, and it's generational work. So I feel pretty wu-wei about this whole political moment with what happens with the NMHA, because I trust the work that we're doing and what I'm seeing happening. And it's not just me taking a stand. There's a really beautiful emergence of spirit through people who are communing with plants and mushrooms and remembering who they are and remembering their ancestry and reclaiming ourselves as sovereign beings together. That can't be beat. So I really truly believe in that, and that we'll continue to heal through relationships, and we're reaching a point here on Turtle Island where it's really time to do healing and alchemy work between different bodies and different communities, and that's going to take time, and that's going to take real commitment and devotion and intention to actually be in relationship and build solidarity where trust has been broken century after century, generation after generation, and we are part of a new wave of generations that will restore.
Thank you guys so much. Yeah. We're going to transition to questions, but just if you didn't know, the Spore booth is like literally right there, and there is a sign-up sheet to get involved. My coalition has a membership program anywhere from $1 to $1,000 if you've got all those resources to help organize our communities to make sure that you have the resources so that the people have a voice in this process.
There's no financial barrier to entry to become a member of the My Coalition. It is like a monthly give, but if $1 is even too much for you, just reach out to us and we'll hook you up with membership. Yeah.
And you can get on the newsletter and be involved in Denver if you come out there or in any way to be part of this movement. So now we want to open up the questions to the community. If you do have a question, I guess you can just say it really loud, or I can get you this microphone. Go ahead.
You're gonna do it? Yeah. Who has a question? Thanks. So I see it a lot in our local. Adam, I live here. I see it a lot in our local situations that arise, that a lot of trauma comes around. And then on a national level too, and you said with your movement, it was passed by 51%. So that's kind of like 49% of people who feel disenfranchised. So I guess I'm curious how you
see that or tend to that. Does that make sense? Okay.
Oh, no. I thought I was being helpful, but I'm not. Sorry about that.
We have 2 mics too. Test. We'll make it work. So, I question that framing a little bit. That 49% of people were disenfranchised because the Controlled Substances Act that has made all of these medicines and any drug, anything that we call a drug, illegal, was the disenfranchisement. And the democratic process is like, there's some people disagree with how things go. And though, what I do feel about your take there is that, so for the NMHA, the Natural Medicine Health Act, this statewide initiative that's coming in November, one of their biggest campaign points is that Colorado, according to some studies, has recently, this past year, been ranked worst in the country for mental health. And I don't know, I haven't looked super deep into these studies, but I did look into them. And the studies point to lack of access to healthcare services and mental health services and just poor infrastructure as being the primary reasons for that. So to put psychedelics into that broken system, that's potentially disastrous. And the disenfranchisement that already exists is that we don't have that collective care and that infrastructure in place. Like, people should have basic needs met. We have such an abundance of like gross wealth and excess that could take care of people, and we could allot it to take care of our communities. And the setting part of, like we mentioned earlier, in psychedelics, according to the research, this is like Johns Hopkins research, the set and setting really matters for people's experience. So if we're trying to cram psychedelics into a state that has this infrastructure that doesn't have the set and setting to really hold this at that level, I don't see that as being good for Coloradans. And it takes a long time to rehabilitate infrastructure in that way. So, ideally, the wave of alternative medicine keepers and healers that Colorado does really have in spades could, be involved in like a transition process. But because the way power is distributed right now, and the power analysis is really important to understand this piece of policy, and a lot of people just don't have it. Yeah, real quick. Right now, because there's no way that the current infrastructure and regulators in Colorado have a clue or have the bandwidth to know what to do with psychedelics, the corporate head, they're going to be looking to who they consider to be experts, and that's largely going to be the politically savvy and the people who already have political power to dictate what the implementation will look like. Does that make sense? So yeah, I mean, we have to take into account that there is a lack of readiness to integrate. And if we're going to integrate psychedelics responsibly, there's a lot more education work, there's a lot more community building work for people to actually be at a place where they are ready to receive it well. And to me, it's not so much about the percentage of the vote. I think that will turn as people get actual, true, honest education and are empowered to be able to steward medicines in their communities themselves. I hope that was a helpful, accurate response. We're going to move to some other people, though.
Okay, should we have people just come up?
Any other questions?
Oh, thank you.
I'm like, am I gonna ruin lives? Oh, it's working.
Hi, y'all.
Asia.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your sharing today. I haven't heard anyone make a really powerful case for community stewardship. It's and so when I'm thinking about the average everyday person wanting to know how psychedelics are being distributed, for what reason would they choose community stewardship over psychedelics in an institutional setting? So can you make a case for community stewardship, A? And then another question, which you don't have to answer, but do you think mushrooms are politically biased?
Sovereign, do you want to go into any of that? Mushrooms are so queer. They are, I think they say different things to different people, and I'm certain that they have an agenda, and it's a multifaceted agenda. And I am not completely sure about what it is, but I trust it. I have some ideas. I do think they're collectivist, and that they want to compost what has become toxic and what needs to be brought down and broken down for parts and redistributed, that has, is destroying the ecosystem. Anything that's not life-giving and is supporting the ecosystem, the mycelium wants to take that in and regenerate it. So I think that's pretty political. I wouldn't give them a party, though. I would give them, they're throwing their own party, so. Like it. I'm with that. Yeah, I love the first question too. I feel like I would love to give it a shot right now. So I think the easiest case is, so therapeutic medical access, we are for that. There's there's a huge diversity of needs, and ways that people could benefit from having a relationship with psychedelic medicine. I'm very wary of any sort of model that isn't held in community trust. Period. Specifically with this, the big part of a person's healing and hopefully positive transformative experience is not the actual psychedelic experience or session itself. It's the integration. The actual the journey or the ceremony that you have is a catalyst, and it shows you. You can get guidance, and you can have sludge alchemized through your cells, and you can be refreshed and reset and be given. You'd be shown the work that you have to do, but you have to do it. Is your responsibility. These medicines are not our saviors. They're not going to do it for us. They're here to help us, and we have to be in partnership with them. That means reciprocity. That means the quality of the relationship really matters and how it will affect your experience, and the amount of support and collective capacity and community capacity that we have to support people through their integration is primary. Because if people are they're going to, a psychedelic therapist, and those people do really amazing work. Many of them do really amazing work, and some of them do really fucked up things, and there's a lot of abuse in those spaces too. But if the only means of access for people is to, pay probably astronomically for a psychedelic session, and then you have like a few rounds of like an integration calls or something like that, it's not nearly enough. We need the capacity for communities to be able to support that integration process together, and it has to be accessible. That has to be accessible, so those means have to be given to the people, or people are going to have these really powerful, profound, transformative experiences. But transformation doesn't necessarily mean further well-being. It can also bring about the demise of people, and that can happen at a collective scale. The potential for irresponsible integration of psychedelics into communities and in society to accelerate a lot of destruction, which I think is just part of the process that we're in, if I'm being super frank. I don't think any of us want total annihilation. I think we want to be able to build thriving communities and ecosystems, and these medicines can help us. But if they're held in a way that's profit driven and extractive, that quality will impact the people who only have access through those models, I believe. So that was a shot.
One more. This is the last one.
This is the last question.
This is more of a comment. It sounds I missed your presentation, most of it, but it sounds to me like you're saying that using mushrooms or other mind-expanding drugs can cause one to go to consciousness. And
Could you say that last part again?
bring one to consciousness, expanding the mind. But from where I sit, it's the same. If one expands their mind, they don't need a substance to do that, and it's much safer. So could you speak? Okay. So from my point of view, consciousness can be expanded without substance, and then there's no abuse. So could you speak on that, and why aren't people thinking in that direction as opposed to, I'm going to use LSD to expand my mind. I'm going to expand my mind naturally and move into consciousness and connection with Source directly. Thank you.
I would say first with that, it's clear that is available to us through breath work, through meditation, through cultivating a relationship with oneself. Absolutely. But for me, or from where I'm sitting, I feel like we are in this place where it's already started. So I think to answer that, it's a combination. It's a combination of having relationship to psychedelics and the knowing of you can also do this way as well. I think it's a both and, because for some people, at least where I sit, I'm like, folks are they're looking for something that's not in themselves, and so this is a way for them to go to that thing and then come back. And if done right, it's like, hey, go do that. But ultimately, it's about, like what Duffy was speaking to earlier, it's about not expecting psychedelics to do the work for you. It's about you doing the work that you need to do. And then, like for myself, I'll speak for myself personally, like I'm not someone with my relationship to psychedelics, it's like once every so often. It's not something that I have relationship with, like, say, on a daily basis. For that reason, because I have this knowing and relationship to myself, that I can find that in me. But again, I think that's for me, like collectively, I think we're all in different places, and and then we're also in this culture where we're looking for the quick fix. So why not, if knowing that, like I said before, take the fix, but then also with the preface of, like, you need to go back to yourself. Like, this isn't going to be the thing that saves you. You're going to save you, but this thing is going to, like, help you deepen that relationship to yourself. That's how I would answer it.
We would love for you to continue that conversation, and anyone else who wants to have, go thread off anything we talked about up here and get to know us more and come over to our table. It's right behind you. Big Spore banner. And did you want to add something to that quickly, Lex? I think we're out. Yeah, I think we're. We could, we could do it all day.
I just want to say one thing. If you want to look up, I just want to say decriminalized nature is another movement, and the whole notion of it is the fact that natural substances are criminalized. And that even notion in general, would we look to it and be like, why is that even criminalized? So I just wanted to plant that seed. If you haven't heard of decriminalized nature, to look that up. But we can wrap up. Thank you, everyone.
Well, real quick, I got to add to that.
Oh, God.
That's save the movement talk to the movement. There's a lot of wild politics going on in this movement, and I have relationship with Decriminature. They came right after Denver, and but there's something that needs to be spoken to with that, with like a psychedelic exceptionalism. But I also think that there's just an idea of that supremacy is very insidious. It can find its way into anything. So, my way to spirit, to healing, to God, to whatever is different than other people's ways, and people have different needs. And but what's important is that it's everyone's right to seek healing, and it's all of our responsibility to make sure that we are going about our healing in ways that are actually healing and not perpetuating patterns of illness and violence and abuse and things like that. So.
Thank you, Crestone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Hug a tree, take a nap.
Thank
It'll
you
save
so
your
much.
life, I
Sorry about
promise.
going over.